Welcome to another episode of Film Buff Bros, and in this episode, we're going to be comparing the original Fright Night to the remake.
Scary.
Kind of.
Not really.
All right, so I'll just go through my notes here. I got the remake on my page here, so I'll go to the original. Not a huge fan of the original. There's some aspects I like. I thought the protagonist does a pretty good job of acting. So realistic lighting and decent cinematography. Scoring is pretty corny and cheesy. Sounds like a Fisher-Price keyboard, and there was lots of awesome keyboards back then, so it's not because there wasn't really good keyboards back then. What did I have here? Way over the top comedic acting. It works pretty well. Many shots in certain scenes that drag on way too long. They're like a couple beats too long, and you kind of lose the comedy or lose the suspense or frightfulness in it. The vampire's assistant is an odd role, seems like a superfluous role. The scene in the alley where the girlfriend laughs at Evil, his buddy, doing the vampire prank, and then in the next scene she's super paranoid that there's a vampire coming, so that continuity someone missed there. And the vampires look pretty cringy. They kind of do look like bats, but there's just no animatronics. It just looks like a mask. So not a huge fan of the original, but it's worth a watch. I guess I'd recommend it if you like 80s and you go into it with a low bar or a low expectation.
Yeah, like I wanted to like this movie so bad, and I had to start it so many times. Like from the opening scene, the steady cam, it's a point of view shot. It goes creeping up to the house, but there's like no music. But then it's got like they're watching a horror movie on TV, and it goes into the window, and it's like this great opening, and then you're just, I don't know, it just gets worse and worse as the film goes on. Editing continuity is not there for the film. There's a scene in the beginning where she's on the bed like with no sweater on, and then it cuts back to him and she's in the background with the sweater on. Oh, really? So like just kind of blatant. I don't know if it's sloppy or what, if they did it on purpose, but there's no score until the first 11 minutes in the movie. I love scores in movies, so right away I'm just like, it doesn't pull you in like those other movies. There's 80, when he's on his bike, there's music. When he's on his way to the school, there's music. When he gets out of bed, this movie is just, there's no momentum to the movie. And the score, which is done by the same guy who did Terminator, which I love that score by Brad Fiedel for Terminator. It just seems like it's weird. It's like, seems like the end of a movie end credits with the electric guitar, and it's so slow, and it seems super unsure of itself. So the lack of music is huge for me. The friend I found so irritating, man. Like I couldn't stand that guy. Like
over the top.
Yeah. Music doesn't sound cohesive. It should have been more prominent. I didn't really like the Peter Vincent, Roddy McDowall guy. Kind of found him boring and stilted. The two things I'll say, makeups and special effects were all right. And the production design and the sets were pretty good. It was filmed in that Colonial Street, same place that The Burbs was filmed.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah, and I thought the guy who played the main vampire did a pretty good job of acting too.
Yeah, he's all right. Yeah.
So the remake, I thought it was the color correction was oddly and overly undersaturated. Colin Farrell's attempt at subtle comedy is pretty cringy. The first act pacing is like quite fast. Every scene is lit virtually the same. Comedic timing is rushed and mostly misses the mark. Dialogue sounds like its initial table read. Conventional and orchestral derivative scoring. Cringe comedy, the awkward, every character kind of has that same awkwardness, and that's how they deliver the comedy. Like, lots of superfluous dialogue. Colin Farrell's windows are painted black, like instead of having drapes, and no one in the neighborhood notices that. It's just silly. Colin Farrell seems more like a kidnapping rapist than a vampire, which is super dark, especially for a horror comedy. The vampire hunter seems like a Russell Brand impersonator. It's like they couldn't get Russell Brand, so they had this guy. Why doesn't the protagonist tell his neighbors a kidnapping killer set his house on fire? You know, he's like, you don't have to tell him there's a vampire. You said your crazy neighbor lit your house on fire, right? Why doesn't Charlie's character's girlfriend struggle or scream when Colin Farrell picks her up and like carries her off in the nightclub, and people are just like, yeah, dude, you're raping a chick, you're kidnapping a chick. Like, it's no, like bouncers are not going to let that happen, let alone like other people in the club. There was a lot of consistency, things like, why doesn't he let his girlfriend know, like, yeah, they're like, I think my neighbor's a vampire, or, you know, I know that he's a vampire. He doesn't really let her know. He's just like, I can't see you tonight or whatever, I'm studying something I can't tell you about. Like, not good. Don't recommend it. Didn't like it.
Man, there's so many bad things about this movie. The jump scares are ridiculous. There's just jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. The beginning with like almost being the climax. Yeah, that was terrible. I thought the pacing was like slightly better than the original, which isn't saying anything good, really. Tension is really not. It's just super quiet, and then there's a jump scare, and then it goes back to super quiet. I can't stand that. Score has like no identity, huge lack of identity. And the Anton guy, which we both liked him in Curb Your Enthusiasm, you know, but he plays a very flat character in that show, and he's so flat in this movie. You know, he just seems like Luke Perry, like type of whispering all his dialogue. One thing I did like is like he opens his closet and he's got all these uniforms and costumes in there. I thought, but then they never did anything with that, so that could have been cool. Russell Brown character, unwatchably annoying. McLovin, part of me hated him, but part of me kind of thought it was funny when he became the werewolf or when he became the vampire. But it was still bad. CGI terrible. 3D stuff. It's trying to do 3D in some of the movie too. I don't know if it was like if it's going to be pitch it as a 3D. If you're going to put 3D in it. The CGI is super cheap. Colin Farrell, I thought he was all right. I kind of liked him better than Chris Sarandon. But it was just super predictable, boring movie. Yeah, so the overacting, don't recommend it. Like both of them, I got 1 out of 5. I don't recommend you watch them.
Yeah, like a half a star out of 5 or a turkey. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I barely recommend watching the first one. Definitely don't recommend watching the second one. And yeah, the McLovin guy, I think he's actually kind of a good performance in it. And the guy who unfortunately died, the guy from Curb Your Enthusiasm, he's decent. And Colin Farrell in other roles, he's decent. I'm not hating on like any of these people as an actor as a whole. It's just like the movie. It probably had a lot to do with the editing and the scoring. But yeah,
there's one horrible scene in it where he's got that like hot neighbor chick and he saves her and he pulls her out of the house into the sun, and then she explodes, and then everything after that he's just back in high school talking normally. His girlfriend just his neighbor just exploded. So no, stupid. Just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no one saw her explode either. It was in broad daylight, right? Like, and the CGI was terrible when that happened.
Terrible.
All right, so that's our review of the Fright Nights. Click subscribe below, leave a comment below, and check out all of our videos up here at this playlist.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.